Hello everyone, my name is Sergio Rodriguez and today I'll be doing my debate response on Ms. Tamara Lackey's argument that climate change is not a national security issue. Ms. Lackey argues that climate change is instead a humanitarian and technological issue. And while I agree with her that it is a humanitarian and technological issue, I also think that it is a national security issue and should be addressed as such. Additionally, Ms. Lackey's argument is from the perspective of U.S. national security and seems to center around how the U.S. territory is large enough for us to weather these changes. However, I'm not sure that we will actually be able to escape unscathed from this, which is why I believe that it is a national security concern that deserves the sort of funding and attention that traditional national security issues like terrorism and Chinese aggression get. If we go by Hans Morgenthau's 12 factors, we can see that climate change affects geography, natural resources, and national morale. Geography in America is affected by the rising sea levels of climate change and the worst drought in 1,200 years seen in the southwestern U.S. As states like California, Nevada, and Arizona continue to dry up, the habitability of said states is being called more into question. Just recently, Lake Mead, which supplies water to much of southern Nevada and southern California, has reached its lowest level since the Hoover Dam was built. Because of this drought, we will no doubt see natural resources in our country affected. As the water continues to dry up, agriculture and livestock will become more expensive and eventually impossible to sustain in those regions. Finally, I think that national morale in the U.S. is or will be affected by global climate change. Superstorms in the Gulf of Mexico over the past 20 years have wreaked havoc on the coastline, leaving many people displaced and some never returning, not to mention the billions of dollars in damages every year. Two other points by Morgenthau that I think could be argued as to why this is a national security issue are industrial capacity and military preparedness. As discussed in the Defense One article on Arctic war games, military planners now must consider new land that is being exposed in the Arctic Circle due to climate change. Also, many of the severe weather events seen throughout the country have done billions of dollars worth of damage to military installations. Two examples are the 2018 destruction of Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida following Hurricane Michael, or the 2019 flooding of Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. If you choose to not take the more traditional route of classifying national security the way that Morgenthau does, then I believe you could absolutely argue that climate change is a human security issue as defined by Edward Newman. The instability that will eventually be brought about by climate change will most likely affect even a country as big and prosperous as the U.S., and that human security aspect just can't be ignored. Another one of Ms. Lackey's arguments against making climate change a national security concern are that she worries about giving government more power with which they may violate our privacy and infringe on our rights. I agree with her sentiment on this, but I think it may be possible to get government involvement without giving them more power. Specifically, in the documentary Climate Refugees, one of the speakers proposes the idea that governments should not punish citizens and companies to push their climate change agenda, but should instead incentivize them. We can already see this playing out now with federal tax credits for electric and hybrid vehicles, and I think we should continue down this road in other forms as well. Finally, Ms. Lackey says that a common point of climate change being classified as a national security issue is the refugee crisis that it creates, but that crisis is not a dire threat for America. However, former Secretary of Defense James Mattis does believe that climate change and the refugee crisis brought on by it will be a national security threat to the U.S. He believes that the humanitarian refugee crisis that will come from climate change leaves many people vulnerable to be taken advantage of, specifically by terrorists. These refugees may be fleeing Pacific Island nations and not heading to America, but the possibility of radicalization by Western-hating terrorists will no doubt have an impact on American national security. To summarize, I think that climate change is a national security issue, and I agree with Ms. Lackey that we can solve this through the American spirit of innovation and through technology. But I think it's also important that we start solving it now and not when it becomes too painful to ignore in our country. With a deliberate effort and the kind of attention behind it that only a national security issue can bring, I believe that we can still fix things before it's too late. Thank you.